Thanks for tuning in to the SportsByJared podcast. If you like this video, hit the like and subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on your notifications. Today I want to talk to you about Tyrese Maxey and Immanuel Quickley from the University of Kentucky. If your team is picking late lottery or later in the first round, these are two players from the University of Kentucky who can really help your team out in the NBA draft. And if your team is focused on building in the NBA draft, these are two guys that can help your team in the future. Maybe not as much their rookie season, but in 2 to 3 years, you might be talking about potential star players. First, let's get into Immanuel Quickley. Immanuel Quickley was the SEC Player of the Year. He averaged 16 points a game on about 40% shooting and maybe about 40% from the three. In every one of the NBA combine drills, he's finishing top 2 or 3 in shooting, three-point shooting, and free throws. And to win the SEC Player of the Year is a big deal. If you ever watch the University of Kentucky, you realize nobody really puts up major stats on their team unless they're having a down year. So the years when they're not doing well, they'll have a guy like Archie Goodwin who will come in and average maybe 18, possibly 20 points a game. When Jamal Murray was there, I think he averaged around 20 points a game because I think he was pretty much one of the only, options outside of, I think, Tyler Ulis, but he was the only NBA option on that team. So when you see players like that for University of Kentucky, John Calipari always makes them share the ball. So that means if he went to another smaller school or someplace like Duke, he would have got the ball more. He would have shot more. If you look at Duke every year, their top 2 or 3 players get all the shots. Like when Zion Williams was there and RJ Barrett were there, they got 15, almost 20 shots a game. Players on Coach Calipari's team never get that many shots because what Coach Calipari tries to do is he tries to get all his top freshmen into the NBA. So when he gets those 5-star recruiting, that number 2 or 3 recruiting class in the nation, he puts that class together and he tries to get all the players to the NBA because he knows when he's trying to recruit the next guy to come into UK. If he can say he has 5 to 10 or 20 people in the NBA, that does better for him than to just say, well, we have 1 or 2 guys that made it. And if you look at the guys that come out of Kentucky, there's a lot of guys that are really good in the NBA. You got Bam Adebayo, you got Devin Booker, you got Anthony Davis, you got John Wall, you got DeMarcus Cousins. All these guys went on a team. They didn't put up big stats in college, but then they're in the NBA, and you can see how they're dominating and looking really, really good. The thing about Calipari's system is, you're not going to put up numbers, but the NBA players are going to see it. He's going to have the combine at the beginning of the season that's going to bring NBA scouts to the team. He's going to have high-level talent, but he cares about every player that comes on this team. Whereas somebody like Coach K, if you're a 5-star recruit, but you come and you don't do too well, and you're not the best out of the 3 players, look at Cam Reddish, he's not going to feature you. So Cam Reddish, if he would have went somewhere like Kentucky, he might have been way more efficient. He probably would have put on 12, 13 points, but he would have went probably top 3 in the draft because his efficiency numbers would have been better because everybody shares the ball instead of just him having to be the one who shares the ball. So back to Immanuel Quickley. To win SEC Player of the Year is obviously a big deal. The SEC has gotten much better since some of the guys like Billy Donovan's been there. But the guy from Auburn, since he's gotten down there and started coaching, the SEC's gotten a lot better. So a team that's looking for a guard, Immanuel Quickley is about 6'3". He's a great shooter. He's really good on defense. A team late in the lottery, I wouldn't put it past the Spurs to trade back down into the first round, maybe late 20-something pick, get Immanuel Quickley. In 2 or 3 years, this guy is how did everybody miss on him? And that's one of the big things about players in the draft is you see a guy and he's about 21 years old. He played 2 years in college when everybody's playing 1 year. A lot of those guys end up being decent in the NBA, but most of the time the NBA scouts are looking for all the top freshmen. That's why it's easier now to find better players late in the draft because now everybody's looking for the freshman who dominated. And if you weren't the freshman who dominated, then you're automatically going to slip in the draft. Next, let's get into Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey is another talented freshman that went to the University of Kentucky, put up pretty good numbers, and he looked really good in the Kentucky uniform. His game reminds me a little bit of not as explosive Dwayne Wade. He has that little, crossover, quick first step, get to the lane. He has a really decent mid-range game. His three-point shooting can definitely be improved on, but because his free throw shooting is pretty decent, I wouldn't put it past him that he'll be able to develop three-point shooting as he progresses in the NBA. If I'm the Miami Heat later in the first round, or maybe a team like the New Orleans Pelicans picking at number 8, I believe, and then maybe the New York Knicks, if everybody's off the board, Tyrese Maxey is definitely a very good option for those guys. Not only is he only 20 years old, coming off a freshman season, but he has the ball handling, and it seems like he has the work ethic to end up being one of the better players in the NBA. And if you're drafting and one of the guys from Kentucky drops to you in the 13 range or later, you got to go ahead and try to pick one of those guys up, because we've seen with Devin Booker, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, even though the stats might not have been great, when they get into the NBA and they're not limited to the amount of shots and they get more minutes, the numbers start going out. I'm not saying Tyrese Maxey or Immanuel Quickley will end up being the next Devin Booker or Tyler Hero, but if I had to put money up, I would say that these two guys have a really good chance of outperforming a lot of the other late first round picks or late lottery guys. And not only are those two guys coming out, Kentucky also has Nick Richards and Ashton Hagans. Ashton Hagans, I'm not too high on. I think he is a decent point guard. He might end up being a decent backup. I think his ceiling is probably an Ishmael Smith type. He's not really a particularly great shooter. He's a great defensive player. It looks like he can pass the ball a little. If I'm in need of a backup point guard in the second round, I'm definitely going to give him a look. Maybe not at the beginning of the second round, but if you give me the mid to late second round, I'm definitely getting Ashton Hagans a look. Next is a guy like Nick Richards. I know it took him 3 years to actually contribute in the center position, but if you're looking at centers, normally they take about 2 to 3 years to progress and become better anyway, so I wouldn't really put it past him too much. Kentucky in the previous 2 years had really good guard play, so Nick Richards wasn't going to be a guy who the team focused around. But again, Nick Richards did have big games in his first 2 years, but I think this year he finally became consistent. Well, I know the NBA doesn't really value back-to-the-back basketball players anymore. Nick Richards can be a guy who can provide good defense, block shots, get rebounds, and just be that big body when you have a guy like Nikola Jokic, or you have one of the teams who have the big body centers who are going to play around the rim. I don't know about Nick Richards' athleticism compared to guys like Dwight Howard and DeAndre Jordan, super athletes, or Jared Allen, but I think he has enough athleticism to be a shot blocker, rebounder, not maybe as much of a rim runner as those other guys, but he'll at least be able to put a couple of points from being able to put post moves in or whatnot. So if you're in the second round, there's a couple of Kentucky guys, and late in the first round or mid, late lottery, you can get a guy like Tyrese Maxey. I think with the other guys on the board, maybe Tyrese Maxey falls out of the lottery. I'm pretty sure Immanuel Quickley doesn't go in the lottery, but Kentucky has some good guys that every team should be looking for in the NBA draft if they're drafting in the ranges that I discussed earlier. So if your team doesn't have an early first round pick, don't put your head down. There's still some good talent on the board. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, please tune in to the next episode. Like, subscribe, and please leave your comments.